Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, get ready for Gnosis. Well, since it's the end of the year now, I always like to make a actual audio commentary on where do we stand today. Well, it's very interesting, and as usual in life, things really don't change, and they never have. The interesting situation, at least in my mind, which really hasn't changed all that much either, not necessarily my mind, but the conclusions that I have come to that I now know to be 100% valid, is the fact that we have the answer to everything. Even common science, common idiot physics, works on a high level, and people are taking a lot of these low-level discoveries and doing amazing things with them, or could be, yet all of this is squashed by nothing more than corruption. And it's pretty sad, because this is costing our entire society to collapse, and the death of our loved ones, which never really had to die, at least not at that age. We're in a very evil, vulgar time where the only thing that really matters is how much money you have in your pocket, and you step on your fellow human beings. Inhumanity to mankind is really the rule, and it always has been. And if you look at history, you can understand that things have never, ever changed, and they never will. And there's a greater understanding to all of this, and of course there's just the minutia of it as well. But let's talk about certain things. Now, the most important needs that we have in our life, when it really comes by to getting on, to being able to survive, prosper, and make your way in life, to do what everybody states they want to do, but it's kind of a fallacy there as well, because you're not an island unto yourself, and we found out what is happening now when things become pandemic, etc., and certainly should. If you're a believer in this society, and most people are, they don't want to attack the people or have controversy with the people that sign their checks, just like the physicists. Sean Carroll's one of these who, when you really listen to people, and the one thing nice about the net is that they have to talk a lot. And they have to put hours of information out there, and they really give their true beliefs. He stated that, it's a little bit too tough to be a person that is controversial within a system, because you constantly have to fight for your position. This causes a great fatigue. It means that every day is a boxing match. Well, this gets tiresome year after year. So the best thing to do is shut your mouth and go along. Basically, that's what he said. And I think that's the point with most people. There are people out there that just have that kind of contrary way of working with things just for the sake of being contrary. But you're not supposed to be that. But, working opposite of a flawed, horrible system is a lot of work. And you're then labeled the renegade, and it becomes a very problematical way to exist every day. And technically, you're fighting the person who's signing your check. So no one really does that. At least not to any great extent. You always have your people that break off, write their own books, try and do their own things, and they have a very particular type of personality and way of operating that's really gutsy, and very few people have this. And it pushes you in a particular corner where your back's against the wall and you're fighting. This is how most people tend to work when it comes down to having controversy. And most people are not going to do that. It's easier to go along. Happy wife, happy life. Well, what that's insinuating is that you have to bend over to your wife so that your life is better, when there should be some sort of golden mean that is reached, and a universal partnership, and that should be something that works in all areas of life. But 80% of the marriages fail. I'm assuming another 15% of those don't work too well either. So are there any successful marriages? Well, probably very few. People tolerate each other, they stay together for their children, etc. But the reason I mention that is because that's how organizations work. It doesn't seem like anybody gets along with each other. And even in groups where people claim to have the same dogma, there's a lot of infighting. And then we get into the personal problems where people who are causing internal problems, relationship problems within groups. And I've read about these things. It's just very interesting. Even in places like radical political belief systems, well, they start, there's problems happen where people are having relationships with other people's wives, and all this stuff falls down there because you all believe the same thing. But if you're going to cause trouble within your society structure, it doesn't matter what you believe, it's going to be destroyed. Still, taking all that into consideration, and we look at what we've learned and the type of technologies we have today to figure things out, it appears we've solved just about every single human problem. And frankly, these have been solved for many, many years. We can say some of these things have been solved for, well, we could say hundreds of years, at least bringing things up to the last 50 years or so, we've solved all of our problems. There is a cure for all disease. It is without question. Yet why don't we have this? One of the things that cures just about everything, including problems with these pandemics, is stem cells. And there's a lot of other breakthroughs. But let's get back, because we don't want to necessarily, there's a jump when you go into the non-physical that everybody wants to scream about when you get into frequencies and radionics and informational energetic fields that create all life. Well, this is a big jump into the new physics where we have to really move into. But let's not buck the system that much, because they're very scared, because when someone else comes in with a better idea, it means they're just stupid and they're no longer wanted. And it means that there goes your income. That's what they think. I don't think things are that simplistic. It's the same thing with people producing oil and other things. They think that if we have alternative vehicles, that somehow oil is going to non-exist. Well, oil is used for lots of things, and that means those things would probably go up in price. I think it's 8 gallons to make one tire. We live in a plastic world, which isn't really artificial. You're just made out of oil. Oil is natural. People think that, and there's nothing wrong with plastic per se. It's not something you want to eat off of, but it's very cheap, very effective to use. And we need it for something. It's used in medicines. It's used in all sorts of things that we use oil for. But the people in control want to make sure that they're making trillions, which they can possibly not spend. They can't possibly spend all that money. And certainly they don't pass it on to too many people. But that's the reality that they're stuck in. So why they couldn't take their money and shift to alternatives is a question of how evil they are. But they really did. From what I understand, in the late 70s and 80s, the oil companies bought all the solar companies because they were fearful of solar power. Did they develop these and make it a viable resource? No, they basically crushed it. So there's only one company that is not, I believe, petroleum-owned that makes solar panels out of, I believe, Japan or something. There may be some new things coming out of China. But, it's really a great technology that nobody's done anything with. The United States has a huge, almost a third, well, I would say 2/3 of the country probably has enough sunshine to easily power all the rest of the country. And we don't have to put things in the desert. You put things on top of every single building. You know how much land space that is that then is not used up, that we could use for farms and housing? And they've been able to generate power in a Seattle-like environment. Solar panels can run like that. The country of Germany claims that they're running 50% of their electricity comes from solar power. And they have the climate of what would be considered Washington State. So you don't need this pounding down sun, but we certainly have plenty of that. We have, I don't know how many tens of millions, hundreds of millions of miles in places like Texas, California, and all the deserts that we could stick these things easily. But I'm not for that. I think it's a waste of land. Let's just stick it on everybody that's got a roof. Okay, well, here you go again. You're talking logic in a world that is totally illogical, but not really illogical. The people in the solar or the oil industries certainly understand this, and they could care less. They want money. It's evil. It's the Wendigo principle, which I'm using now as an understanding. People are evil. They're intrinsically evil, and they don't care about you. When a company, which of course makes trillions like Walmart, Amazon, etc., don't pay their workers enough and don't give them the needed medical policies and etc. so they can survive. And this is about survival. This is either watching your children die because Bezos needs a new girlfriend, and I'm sure she needs some new boob job. So we have all these problems with companies that make billions and billions of dollars and have excess profits for no apparent reason except for greed, or I should say evil, refuse to take care of you. So how can you possibly work for companies that don't want to take care of you? They're putting you in a terrible, terrible position, which is one of the reasons why we have so much corruption, because that's what we have in the world. Everything is corrupt. And why are we corrupt? Is it just the fact that everybody's greedy and wants more? Well, a lot of it is survival. The cost of everything is outrageous. Almost everybody in the United States now has some sort of medical bill they're struggling to pay for. And they continue to go out and support these corporations that they are slaves to. So we have solved all of our problems, though. There are low-cost ways of treating all sorts of situations, from acupuncture to herbs to lights, etc. But we don't even need a lot of that stuff. But why not use those things? They cost virtually nothing, and you can get some sort of tech to handle those things at the third of the price that you'd pay a doctor. It has been proven that there are numerous healing products and they're thrown in the trash based on products and corruption. So the whole idea was to create government that would then go in there and say, look, well, you can't do this as a business. The people which I represent need to have a fair access to proper care, not the care that you want. And we're not going to buy your products because they're super expensive. We're going to reach a golden mean. So people, and of course there was a big story on Mel Gibson's father, who had one foot on a banana peel and the other one in the grave, and he took him down to Panama where he got stem cells. And this is when he was pretty old as well. I believe he may have been in his 70s and 80s at the time, his father. He got stem cell and he was dying. He got stem cell treatments and now he's still alive today. He's in his 90s. Well, it helps to be Mel Gibson. It helps to have a lot of money. Yet here's a guy who supports conservative causes, people that would not support these alternative treatments, and he certainly isn't going out there and pushing this. He did talk about this on a radio show. But he's not doing anything about it. He has lots of money. He's not conflicting with the power structure. Yeah, you go and talk about it, and I guess that's a certain service. But, when you have power and you want to change things, the religious fanatic that he is, that he speaks masses in Latin, he certainly isn't acting very Christian. He's taking care of his own butt as usual, and that's how things go. What does all that mean? So, it means that things are rotten, rotten, rotten. And as far as I'm concerned, if you don't do something when you have empowerments, you are evil. It's even worse. It's another form of corruption, like being a dirty cop or politician, etc. There's something very evil about that. People in power that don't do things. And it's not just those kind of people in power, which are very direct. It's people that have indirect power. So the point is we have it right there. It's irrefutable. They've used stem cell therapies on COVIDs and everything else. It works and it's kick-ass. Why are we not using it? Well, let's take the position of the government corrupt people. Well, we don't know if it works. So what? Does a dying man need to get a treatment that is 100% known to work? Because a lot of people die and getting treatments that are supposed to work and they don't, particularly cancer and so many other things. So there's all sorts of treatments that don't work that they allow to happen. So what's the problem with stem cells? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. There certainly is a huge amount of data showing it does work. So why would you possibly suppress that? Ivermectin. This is the great healer for COVID. That's been around for over 100 years. This anti-parasitical, which is a whole fascinating other area. It's out of copyright and is made for, I believe, the last time I heard it was 17 cents a pill. And it's also a pill which could be shipped and made by the trillions and shipped all over the world. And a lot of countries do use it. There's even doctors who got into trouble who are refusing not to prescribe it like they were told not to. And these people have even gotten into trouble. Here we go again. So it isn't the fact of what works, what's good for the patient, it's what they're told to do. One governor in a state, and I forget what state this was, Wisconsin or something, I don't remember, in these areas, came out and said that he is forcing doctors through this, which is interesting, going against the Fedi government, to make doctors prescribe this. Now, it appears that Pfizer and others, and I'm not sure if it's Pfizer or one of the other criminal pharmaceutical companies that spend 2% of their money on research and allow the public to pay for the other research, which then they make money off of. Yeah, that's how it works. Listen to this. These are facts. We have solutions. We have pills that'll save people's lives, and we refuse to do it when we have a huge amount of data. Now, ivermectin has been used all over the world for like 60, 70 years. They're using it in different countries and getting kick-ass results with it. Now, Pfizer's come up with what appears to be a similar, if not a copy, of ivermectin that they want to sell for $700 a dosage. I guess it's a 3 or 4 day amount of pills, and I believe the pills cost like $7 to make. And the federal government has bought hundreds of millions of dollars worth of these things. And even with an advance guaranteed order from the federal government, you're not getting a discount. Well, isn't that what everybody goes in? You buy 50 or something. You say, yeah, you're buying 50, so we're going to give you a discount. Well, not if you're the federal government. You pay more for it. So the whole idea is what appears to be, and what I allege, is that Pfizer has copied ivermectin. It's a very similar thing, and they're using it and getting all the money from it. Look at the kind of cons going on. And this is the reason why we invented government. Now, government and laws are amazingly good. People, no, the system doesn't work because of corruption. There's a law for everything to control it, and we've had to do that because of the fact that everybody is evil. So, we have a cure for everything. We have a cure, and if we had better foods than our animals that we eat, which we should stop doing, we're fed better food so they were healthy, and then we consume. Because, it's a progression of problems here. You have sick soil. It grows sick fruit, vegetables and stuff that are low level, low energy, low everything. The animals eat it. You then eat the animals. And then, of course, you get sick. But with all that, which should stop because it just doesn't make sense, it's self-destructive. It goes back to the belief that most people have, which is the fact of evolution. Evolution would never work if you committed suicide all the time by destroying her. It doesn't make sense. Windigo. It's the insanity of evil. And we have to get down to what this is. So if you're looking at evolution, it makes no sense at all. You wouldn't evolve if you completely destroyed yourself. If you were constantly destroying your environment, it wouldn't work. So that's what a parasite is. It sucks off the reality, then moves on. Well, you can only do this so long, particularly as the human species, which is a species unto itself, and that's important as well to a certain degree. But so-called Homo sapiens, or man-like species, have been around for millions and millions of years. Even Homo sapiens have been, and this has been confirmed. So it's a completely different, or it's a unique species unto itself. So all of this we have to look at carefully of what's going on. So the self-destructive nature of things makes no sense. If there's a, quote, God, particularly in the comic book ridiculous fashion that so many people believe in, that somebody's sitting on a throne or hovering around taking care of the world, well, they're doing a really bad job of it. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And then people want to philosophize about it and say, well, when I told this to a Christian, I said, your God is not really doing his job. The world is a complete, well, we don't understand God's plan. Well, that's right, because your God is a psycho, evil, destructive energy that we should get rid of. Certainly hasn't functioned in the going back, if you want to go back. And this doesn't mean modern, all these pagan religions, etc. So the bottom line is that if it goes back 50,000 years, whatever it is, it doesn't work. Mythical comic book creatures that shoot spider webs out of their hands would be a better God form than the nonsense that people believe in today. Spiritual people in general are highly corrupt, and spiritualism, belief in God, hasn't done anything to make anybody better. We have thousands of years of proof of this. So there's a problem here that we have to fully understand. So we have resolved that medical problems have been solved. And stem cells are just one of many things. I've read about alternative treatments for 30 years, coming from a sick family, and the fact that I was never very well until recently. So I've always investigated this. And your number one interest in this world really is about staying well. And how do you do that? I mean, we've been fed and brainwashed that basically all the cool, good foods, ice cream, candies, cakes, and so many fried food, all this is what we like. It sets off bells in your brain because it produces endorphins. Fructose, which is a poison, but they allow it to happen. White bread is a poison. It was actually outlawed by courts, but they somehow then snuck it into the public. Fructose, high corn syrup, is just a poison to the body. It makes you fat. It makes you diseased. It brings on all the problems we're having today in our societies, particularly this pandemic of diabetes. Yet all this is allowed to go for whatever reason. And apparently people are so evil that if you're a food producer, you want to pick the biggest crap you can get that's the cheapest, not what's better for people. I always look at something and say, well, how can I make this a really good product so people can use it? And if I have to use a better item in there, if I have to use something that's gold-plated or something else, you do it because you want to make a better product. That doesn't mean you make less profit. Matter of fact, if you make a really good product, you can charge more for it than a junky product because people appreciate a certain high quality of something. So it's not like they're going to make less money. So what's going on here? Wendigo. So it's always this evil aspect. Now, where does this evil aspect come from? Well, I've done a whole, particularly audio on that, so check that out. I don't want to overdo it, but I mean, that's part of the problem here. We have a very corrupt, evil society, but do we know the answers? It always has been in my mind, and a lot of times with the fact that, and people will tell you this, we just don't know. We don't have the answer for it. This is a complete and total lie. This is part of the Wendigo understanding of reality that we're in, that we don't know. We're trying hard. We're doing all we can. We're spending trillions on research. We just don't know. We're looking for that. We're hoping for that. Complete and total lies. All the information is there. And I see this all the time. As an alternative subtle energy physicist, I see people who claim to be fighting for what's right, and they're very quick to jump on Satan's bandwagon called anti-psi power. Brains a meat puppet, don't do nothing. We have 150 years of research done by top scientists. Scientists that come from institutions that control our well-being, our military forces, etc. Oh, wait, we're not going to believe that. I believe a clown college graduate, a deviant, a convicted felon. These guys know what they're talking about. Oh, you don't believe that MIT laser physicist and what he's come up with. He's a maniac. He's crazy. Listen to the clown college boy. He knows. And he'll tell it to you from his little dungeon. Now, if you think that's some sort of comic relief, well, it kind of is, but the problem is it's 100% true. And then the scientists, for some reason, want to sit next to these clown college graduates and do little seminars. Because they sponsored it, and I guess because they, have money? From tricking people? From juggling things? Yet they have absolutely no background. They know nothing. And then they think they're educated because they talk to people. I've read lots of books. Well, that's part of the process, but you have to be evolved to interpret the information, first of all. And you do need to learn a basic structure. So we have the answers to all of them. It's not just there. We've cured people with just colored lights. Well, that's expensive to do, isn't it? Herbs. There's a new case here, but I'm not how new it is, but I've just been, I've seen his name around. Dr. Sebi. Some people call him Sebi. S-E-B-I. Who's a self-taught herbalist and has cured thousands of people from just about everything. And a lot of celebrities went to him. Well, he got away with it for a long time, but they finally murdered him in prison, like seems to happen to a lot of people. Ruth drowned. To a certain degree, they claim she was injected. Wilhelm Reich. And of course, we have a slew of modern people who seem to die in a place where it should be near impossible to die. Prison. Or otherwise known as execution chambers. So it goes on and on and on. So you think you're going to change that? Well, this has gone on forever, so it's never, ever going to change. But let's first understand principle number one. We have the answers to everything. Even if I consider them the low-level answers, they're still using physical energies to make radical changes. Physical stem cells. Now, I can create stem cells through using informational energetic fields and change everything that way, or make that energy. Or at least that's what we're trying to perfect. But let's not get onto those very complicated and make sense answers to everything. The point is we can take physical stem cells and cure just about everything. And do everything. I think you can grow limbs, you can do whatever. The research, and it's not new, stem cells at a high level of use and perfection have been around for at least 30 years now. From what I understood, penicillin, once it was discovered, it took 10 or 15 years to be put into use. What? 10 or 15 years to massively use such a life-saving item as penicillin? Wendigo. So the whole idea is that there's no other way to explain these things. And of course, everybody contributes. I'm shocked. I've always been in life shocked by how everybody goes along. Now, nobody stands up to anything. And how those few people that do, once you assist them in standing up, they won't stand up for anything else. They won't stand up. It's always the conflict with Sotobo. It's alternative for your reality, but you don't see the bigger reality. This is the problem. I don't see Israel or the Jews coming out helping other people who are being victimized. Why not? The Chinese were horribly victimized. Really, the figures are close to 50 million were murdered by the Japanese. The official BS figure is 20. But what did the Chinese do after that? They went and murdered everybody else. They murdered millions of Tibetans. They didn't learn from it. They took their own massacres and used that example to massacre others with. So, it's the same old story of not understanding the bigger things. Well, let's get back to it. We have the answers to everything. We have amazing advanced technologies that are at least 200 to 300 years ahead of what we're being offered today that we know about and are in use by secret government agencies. One of them, of course, is anti-gravity. I've seen several things demonstrated, but the bottom line is that I've seen anti-gravity in government planes from about 500 feet away, and I'm not the only one that's seen this. There's many, many reports of it. We even know that these systems, for one reason or another, maybe the human copy of them, is very affected by lightning. So lightning messes them up and they gotta get them. So that's why I saw this plane come down and hover, if you call it that, stand motionless, soundless. There was a giant thunderstorm going on. And that also generally chases people into their houses as well. I was happened to be driving in a very deserted area, even though it was deserted, but it was a public area, and all of a sudden, here's this giant plane sitting in an open field in the middle of this tiny little town. But that's just one of the things that I'm very well aware of. And there are thousands. And there are many, many reports just like mine. So, and I had a witness with me on top of it, one of the few times I actually did. So we have all this, right now, all this advanced science sitting there that they refuse to use because basically it goes against the corporate structure. We don't need oil, we don't need doctors, we don't need anything else. Well, what happens there? This is the same thing about their excuses of saying that they don't want to talk about extraterrestrials because people will be freaked out. I don't believe that at all. People make gods of everybody and everything. They pray to turds in the oceans, all the things that people do all the time. This is something that is typical of the evil nature of mankind. It's not going to upset anything. People will call them demons like they're doing right now, or they will call them gods, which they're doing right now as well. But I don't want to get into things like that. And that's another issue we'll get into here that's very important is, does anything matter? Extraterrestrials, alien, ancient history. And I see this all the time. Oh, we're going to figure out how they made the pyramids, all this stuff. Who cares? There's probably better ways to do it. We're not learning. We have studied pyramids for hundreds of years now and got nothing from it, as we've got nothing from so many other things we've studied. We don't need to study old stuff. We don't need to go back. We're into the new sciences, the new physics, and we need to grasp these and empower ourselves. Let's stop wasting our time. We can't study everything. Who cares about this stuff? We will never, ever know. And if we do know, like so many things that have been unearthed in all over the world, by the way, but particularly apparently in Egypt, they disappear. You don't have access to them. There's all sorts of tunnels and passages, and there may be huge underground facilities all over Egypt that we never see. You can't spit in Egypt without basically hitting an ancient monument. The same thing is in actually Central and South America. They're just everywhere. And none of this stuff is dug up and looked at because of the fact that it takes a huge amount of time and skill, and nobody wants to put any money into this. Very, very interesting as we get involved in all these areas that we find all this out. So we don't need to look back. We need to use what we have right now, which we know works, but we refuse to use it. So we have all the answers for everything. And this also comes from subtle energy physics. I have put together all the answers for everything. I just now need to take the time to research everything, to apply it, to get the kind of startling results that we need in health and prosperity and other areas. So there's nothing really to study here. I'm not looking for solutions. I have them. I need to perfect a process that works. Now, society is the same way. So we have cures for everything, irrefutable cures for everything. Irrefutable medications that are even 100 to 80 years old that can treat terrible conditions we have today that work and work cheaply. So we have all that. So all of that is there. And the whole idea is not to be ripping in and out body parts with transplants or you don't hear much about it anymore because it was such an absurd process. The singularity. We're going to be half machine. They started brainwashing people with all these piercings so they can stick metal in their face. But this is a part of slowly conditioning you to have foreign object in your body that basically will be controlled by somebody else. And of course, what they really ultimately control is your wallet, because you're going to have to pay for this, get all this put in, have it maintained. And this gets back into the same thing. And it's just bogus. We certainly need to work with consciousness, higher level machines, and even other machines. But we don't need them to tell us what to do. And that's really what it comes down to. And of course, all of this AI and everything else is completely bogus because it's never went anywhere because none of that stuff really works. And it's also very, very expensive. You cannot copy the human brain, regardless of how fast computers get processing information. The human brain is more about processing than just processing information. There's a whole complicated things that go on. And of course, there's the high levels of functioning. The psychic powers, the remote viewing, all the things you do, the astral projection, the creation of the light body. Machines can't do this. They can assist you to do things and make you do it faster and stronger. Machines don't do that. So if everybody's a singularity, you're actually disrupting your energy fields to stop you from going on to the higher levels. And of course, society loves that because now you're a muted, neutered human being. But there's no question all of this is a reality. There's no question about any of this, and we've done some pretty bad research in 150 years, but there has been 150 years of research with volumes after volumes of information documenting and detailing all of these higher extreme abilities. But let's not even get into that. As I said, let's get back to stem cells. These are very physical cells. They do everything. They cure everything. So health has been solved. If we want to throw in all the other things, we can throw that as well. But, Western science loves these kind of, injectable, easy to do things instead of using, energy balancing. And I tend to agree with that. Even if Qi works and acupuncture and everything else does work, it's a great healing tool. But it's also something that rarely works after a few tries. Generally, you have to spend a long time, months, getting treatments to cure or balance anything of an extreme problem. So wouldn't it be better to just get a stem cell injection to heal something? But of course, you need these kind of energy transfers for the higher skills. It's the Qi energies and others that are creating and assisting these higher consciousness abilities. But again, I don't want to necessarily get into that. Because that's so unknown. So it makes the scientific community very fearful. And they laugh at it because it works. And they are frightened of it because they know nothing of it. So when we do those types of things, we have these problems. And with these problems, we have to deal with it. So the literature that has been set up by society, which is tests and medical people and scientists, have all verified stem cells and so many other treatments. Yet what did they do with it? They used it for toilet paper. They even went to have the nerve to say that these aren't valid. They weren't done right. All these things come up because of their corrupt nature and their fighting and being paid off. And don't think anything happens in the society that isn't planned. So the actions that happened with these recent pandemics was planned. Now, is it a real disease? I believe it is a real disease, and it's just one of them. But it may be a real disease that was even created and done deliberately, let out, and not controlled. We don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. Everything in society is controlled. Everything that happens in your town, city, etc., everyone in control knows about it. And they also have hundreds of paid informants that are watching everybody and reporting. Because everybody's a whore and they get free money. It's tax-free. They work with all the criminals. It goes on and on of these things I've talked about. These are facts, people. But without getting into these complicated things that people don't know how to handle or even want to, the point is we have numerous types of cures. We even have cures as simple as intravenous vitamin C. This seems to cure people of almost everything. It costs pennies, and it's easy to do. Imagine if you were sick, you could go to a hospital, and a tech could put you into intravenous vitamin C, and this is going to give your whole body a major jolt and take care of these things. It means it's going to control all the costs, but you got to remember the medical industry is about making money off of you. It's Wendigo, people. That's what it's all about. You're going to hook somebody up to, and let's say we give people a lot of money for it. The actual infusion will say costs $200. I don't know if that's a lot of money or not. You've got techs and everything else that can work there, and they're well paid, and you get sit in there and however long it takes to get an IV drip, or even if it takes hours or maybe even a day. it solves all the problems. It's a lot different than tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, there's been doctors that have diagnosed people with cancer so they could just give them the cancer drugs, which are expensive, that they would then cut or give them fake drugs, but they would get the money for the expensive one. This is the kind of evil that goes on. This goes way beyond greed, people. Greed is one thing. Evil is another. You're playing with people's lives here. And whatever affects one person affects hundreds of others. So let's fully understand that, number one, the advanced concepts of subtle energy physics is 100% valid. It works. It's proven to work. It's just a matter of putting together and implementing certain processes and refining them. But that's still a step or two ahead. Healing as we know it, from vitamin C drips to stem cells, is 100% verified and has been for many years. And it's 100% safe. So what happens if somebody is dying and you give them a vitamin C drip and it doesn't work? So what? You're dying anyway. I mean, how do you resign yourself to allowing that to happen when there is still hundreds and thousands of cases of these things working? So that's been solved. We don't really have medical problems. I don't know if surgery is the answer to anything, but the point is, kind of surgery is... but, one of the most common surgeries is when they clear your arteries out, which the name escapes me because it's a very expensive procedure. It's also very dangerous. Sticking balloons in people's hearts and pushing stuff out. I mean, what kind of primitive nonsense is that? We don't have chemicals to open up arteries, and of course we do. What happens when you give somebody a pill instead of giving him a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 operation, or maybe it's more than that, to drain the system for the basically empowerment, the monetary criminal activity that doctors are famous for? What is our other need? So we have the solution to everything really, which is subtle energy physics. It's there, it works, it has to be refined. And it wouldn't take long to refine it. Bringing up to an extremely high level could probably be done within 3 years if their money was there to do it. Solving just about every problem. You think that's going to solve the problem? Well, it's going to solve the problem for what we need, but the people involved with it will probably all be murdered. And that's not a joke or an exaggeration or dramatics. Happens all the time. Happened to Dr. Sebi. And ironically, all the people that worked with him who were going to make movies, etc., all died. In car accidents, some were murdered. I mean, it's getting to the point. This isn't some sort of coinkydink. There's no coincidence here. I mean, there's just too much of this. And here's a guy that did everything with natural herbs, and I've seen amazing results with herbs, which are basically nothing more than food supplements. So what's the other area that we have a serious need for? And we do have a serious need. And this affects all of our lives and has, again, huge amounts of money going to worthless payments to energy companies. Now, a lot of people's bottom line and even comfort is based on the fact of electricity, generating electricity, moving things. Truck drivers, I mean, a main part of their cost factors is fuel. Few people understand that in terms of airline business, the number one cost after personnel is fuel. People who live in extreme climates or in general, all over the world now, the cost of heating and cooling money is outrageous. I, 15 years ago, was commonly spending $700 to $800 a month, often more than my mortgage, to cool my house in the California desert. Now that's money that goes right down the toilet. That money could have been put into so many other things, paying people to build patios, buying spas, all the things you want to do when you have a house, buying nice furniture, getting a stereo system. Well, if all that money was put into the economy, we're not talking about me, we're talking about the entire population, hundreds of millions of people. Well, just think what that could do for the environment. Now, here again, we have free energy. Now, you can say, and they like to criticize other things, and I talked a little bit about solar energy, but you could say solar energy isn't all that efficient. Well, maybe it isn't, but it certainly does work, and at the very least could be very supplemental. And shouldn't everybody, instead of, most jobs are kind of hooked up to the auto industry, what if most jobs are hooked up to solar power? This is where we need to make shifts. But it's not giving up your car. Original automobiles were not run by petroleum, which was used because it used to pop up out of the ground. You didn't even have to drill for it. As a matter of fact, drilling for oil was something that was difficult to do initially. Somebody had to invent a way of doing that. So the oil that used to be available was all the stuff that just popped up out of the ground. And as I've mentioned, it's already a precious product. But this is where your money is drained. So people are spending a fortune to buy gasoline. It's a huge cost in the aviation industry. We go on, and just plain and simple for you to survive, so you don't die in a box that's 120 degrees at 2 o'clock in the morning, or you don't freeze. So you need to use some sort of electrical energy. And the bottom line is that why not? Everything should be electric. Why not? And pretty much things are now. From our toothbrush to our toasters, everything is now electric. And what's wrong with generating electric heat through electric heaters? It's clean. You get lots of nice heat from it. Yet they do draw a lot of electricity. But who cares? Electricity should be free. Why? Because energy is free. Now, we've had a big gaggle of lies that came in, I think it was about 10 years ago, where they started perpetrating this zero-point energy. And the people involved in zero-point energy, some of them, and I've always wondered this because I've contacted a few of these people, are out-and-out Satanists. Now they're even working with Satanists, with their funny engines we don't need funny engines that work on all sorts of weird power or are super efficient. We have an energy source that we can use right now. Actually, we were able to use this over 150 years ago with the technology we have without having to retool. We don't need all this retooling, these special engines. We certainly don't need primitive electric cars like that buffoon Musk puts out. That arrogant little nasty guy, typical rich guy. They're all like him, nasty, say whatever on their mind, no social behavior of anything. But the bottom line is that he's got nothing to offer anybody. He's got a bunch of mediocre technology that he tries to scream from all the rooftops that will help. And they was trying to come out with solar panels for everybody's roof to solve the problems, announced this, and then it died. Did you get a call from Mobil? How about Exxon? Arrogant. And who is this guy? This is a guy who invented websites. That's where his money come from. He's a guy who bought into PayPal. He's a great scientist? Your electronic money transfers? Oh, genius. Never thought of doing that. What is this nonsense? So this basic ignoramus who has very little to offer and then screams around with his pseudo technologies he's saying how's great certainly is dealing with garbage. He didn't have the courage, he didn't have the technology to go out and make the solution to everything, which has been around, proven to work, and it's already been researched. And every single automobile company on the planet has a working engine running on hydrogen fuel. Every single one of them, and they've been around for over 20 years from the major. Matter of fact, I saw a hydrogen car in 1969 at JPL when I took a tour there. They used to have open houses in JPL, which is in Pasadena, California. You could go there, and maybe they still have it. But I went there one year, and I saw a hydrogen car there, and that was 1969. Now, hydrogen is a pure fuel. It is not dangerous. People, oh, yeah, with the Hindenburg, we're all going to blow up, we're all going to catch on fire. Run for your life. Nonsense. But, gasoline isn't exactly something you want to throw a match in next to your TV. A gallon of gasoline is equivalent to 4 sticks of dynamite. It's highly stinky, highly flammable, and highly toxic. You don't want to sit there and drink it. It also has to be refined, it's dirty, and of course, it's a very primitive. The internal combustion engine is highly inefficient. Now, they've made very efficient internal combustion engines. Ford seems to have done all this. They also had a zero-emission cars, by the way, and they had that almost 20 years ago. Zero emissions from a gasoline-powered engine. We've had hybrids for years, and why every car is a hybrid? Well, why isn't it? You got like 500 miles on a gallon of gas if you got a hybrid. On a tank of gas. Well, why aren't we using it? Why is this required? These internal combustion engines put out filthy, dirty, poison fumes that if you start your car and run it in your garage, you better stay awake. You better not fall asleep because you'll die. Produce carbon monoxide, which is a deadly poison gas. So what do we got here? So we get this again, that we have what's called hydrogen, the hydrogen fuel cell, and you can use these hydrogen fuel cells everywhere. And what's ironic is there are a lot of these in use that you've never heard about. Some large companies are using hydrogen cells to power their facilities. What? Yeah, they're off the grid. I saw this in a couple of energy spots. They have these hydrogen power stations on their property powering those companies. What? Why doesn't everybody have this? I mean, there's been talked about since, I believe, the 60s, the M converter that some Swiss town was running on. I never know what that was all about. I don't know if it's ever been confirmed, but they certainly were doing this for many, many years, since the 60s. Well, that's only, 60 years ago? Yet it's gone nowhere. Now, hydrogen, people have to understand, is the perfect fuel. It is the perfect technology because it's here, it's now, and it works. And I don't want to get into the intricacies. People have figured out how to condense the gas down so you don't have to fill it up all the time with hydrogen. You can make your own hydrogen as well if that becomes a case. But that's a minor situation regardless of that. Everybody could have a hydrogen generator in their house to run that. And if you like 100-degree temperature in your house, you could easily do that. It would cost you nothing. You like to have it 40 degrees by cooling it, you could do it for nothing. This technology also can be used anywhere. Boats, cars, airplanes, etc. could all use this. What does it put out? It puts out pure water. So what comes out of the tailpipe is pure water. Now, well, yeah, but it must be difficult to make and expensive, etc. Nada. Your regular internal combustion engines, and everybody has done this, I've just mentioned it. It was highlighted in a little documentary that Ford showed its engines. I forget the actor that was Alan Alda. Alan Alda did this research, seems to be interested in science, and he was there with the Ford engineers, and they were showing him the hydrogen car. Guess what? Oh, it takes a complicated engine. We're going to have to spend trillions to retool. Well, if we had to, so what? It's about time we spend money on high-paying jobs and things that really benefit us for the long term. But that's not true. You can take any internal combustion engine and turn it into a hydrogen engine for pennies. Well, now you're making way too much sense, Dr. Thor, because of the fact that why wouldn't we do this? Wendigo. And it's everywhere. And it's certainly in your government. It's in your churches. It's in your ministers. It's in all those fools and liars that want to believe in comic book realities instead of dealing what we need right now. And it does start on that level. Just like it starts on the level that you don't allow your packages to be searched at Costco and Walmart. Because that led up to you lining up for shots and for them controlling you. That's right, it starts there, and it starts to kip out your corrupt, sex-mad, deviant, evil scum. That is called your minister, your priest, your local public official, your mayors and city councilmen who are all scooping in the dough. You think the feds are going to be honest? So how else can we look at this? So we have the solution, stem cells and everything else, and I'm assuming these are not that expensive because treatments aren't that expensive, and they come up with new ways to make stem cells that aren't fetus-based, which is, if nothing else, psychologically repulsive. But, there's an awful lot of humans, and humans should pay for their own evolvement. But this can all be controlled, and there seems to be no problem, which I was talking about. So all that's been resolved on top of that. So let's not get into that issue because you're some ignoramus comic book believer. So all of that's been resolved, and we have many other treatments that are inexpensive. We have drugs that are inexpensive, and why aren't they used? Well, I've already discussed that. Now, we have the same thing with energy. We don't need anything. Everybody could have their own generator hooked up in their house, in their car, in airplanes, in boats, and everything else. Be 100% safe, and it's 100% effective. It's proven technology that has been used for over 150 years now. Fuel cells, I think, were invented in 1880 or something. So, you're probably talking close to 150 years now for something that's known, but we want 0-point energy. Yeah, they want to get they want you to take the eye off the ball while they switch in their own evil agenda. And, people aren't looking for this. Unless you're looking for the filth that's under the rock, when you take a walk in your life, you're seeing the top of the rock. And the top of the rock, of course, where the sun is and the water cleans it, doesn't look too bad. But anybody who's ever walked and then turned over rocks, you see the amount of life that is underneath that rock. All the worms and the bugs and the moisture, it's all there. And few people turn over any rocks in life. But the bottom line is, plain and simple, all of our problems are solved. Now, what do we do about the bigger issue? And everything in life, if you have a good invention, if you have a good idea, if you have a good spiritual principle, it all comes down, and this is where we all fail, including myself, is implementation. We all get lazy. We tend to, Snicker bars are awful good. That TV program's awful good. Let's watch that endlessly instead of doing something else. Everybody wants something done for them, and they don't want to work. And we're all stressed out because we don't really have enough leisure time to adjust. I find that it takes me 2 or 3 days just to relaxing before I can switch my mind into doing proper research and thinking differently and organizing things differently. This all comes to the bigger picture of implementation. So it's all there. And when we have such a corrupt and evil society, and you go out there and try and do this, well, the scientists, to a large degree, people underestimate the power of the scientific community. They tell us, the medical people or the scientists tell us what we should get, what vaccinations, what other things, etc. This is a lot of power. It's implemented by the governments and their basically fascist enforcers, which could be as simple as a nurse or as more complicated as a guy with a gun. So let's not underestimate that. What science tells us and what they make and build are given to the psychotic evil people. Let's talk about the atomic bomb. So certainly the United States is far from a beautiful power where they're doing all the right stuff. But certainly the alternative, particularly as we go back in time, was horrendous. So should Emperor Hirohito have the bomb? They did have the bomb, by the way, but they didn't have a good way of delivering it, apparently. There were tests in, guess where? Japanese, in their love for the Koreans, they had set off nuclear explosions in parts of what is now North Korea. But they had a delivery problem. Einstein said that the Japanese are going to bring a ship into L.A. Harbor and blow it up. This is what he thought would happen, and of course it's a fairly good scenario. Should we give it to Adolf Hitler or Stalin? Would have been better if these people, they were all going for their own nuclear weapons. So we would assume that if these kind of people would have gotten a hold of this stuff, that the world would have been a burnt up mess already. Actually, it's American weakness, which basically America is known for, their weakness, their cowardice, their not following through, and never really winning a war, is what prevented nuclear weapons from being used en masse, which they should have. MacArthur wanted to use them in the Korean War because the Chinese fled over into Korea by the millions. How are you going to control them? So all of this is things we need to understand and what is going on. So all of our problems in life are solved. They're not being implemented. People have tried to get the word out there. There's so many things. By the way, there's already been invented, and there's a French firm that has a bacteria that can eat plastic in minutes. So plastic is not a problem if the bacteria will eat it. Plastic is just solid oil and should be used as such. It should be used to burn and everything else and transferred back into some sort of liquid or just burned in general. All it is oil. And of course, you wouldn't want to drink oil or put it in the oceans or anything else, but it's there. Let's use that plastic for something so we don't have to drill more oil. So what is the problem? Where do we get back to go? It's all about the Wendigo, the evilness of mankind, and those that allow it to happen. Einstein again said, and it's the reason why I kind of like Einstein, even though I think he got caught in a corner and then didn't know how to get out of it, was the fact that, evil is not the problem of this world. It's the good men that do nothing about the evil. And if you do nothing, you become evil. So you could say that evil really is the problem because people don't do anything about it. And if you don't change things, you are then supporting evil, which makes you evil. So I think that's kind of a little disjointed quote from him in terms of what does that really mean. But it sounds good. So that's what the problem is. The problem is implementing everything we have. We have it right now. Nothing causes lots of retooling. Solar energy is at a pretty high level now. You can make panels very inexpensively. They've come up with so many methods of doing that. We have endless rooftops to put these on. Rooftops, sheds, outhouses, trucks that sit out there. We want to put solar energy on the top of your truck if it's got all that space up there. It's not used for anything else. I mean, there's endless places that we have room for without going into our deserts and other places and having millions of miles of solar panels, which I don't think are ecologically necessarily good. We don't need to do that. That's also causing a huge additional amount of money when you can put it on your house. So we have all this. We have hydrogen. We don't even need solar panels. We have hydrogen. Simple as that. With hydrogen, everything is on. Why have we had... I heard somebody talking about this, and they mentioned hydrogen. They were talking about alternative. And his comment was that, hey, well, we decided to miss the boat on hydrogen, and then it moves on to this stuff. What do you mean we missed the boat? Well, it's about time we go looking for that boat. It's about time we get some rope and pull that boat back in. The answer is there. Free energy, cure for all disease. We're looking for it. I hear this bozo Michael J. Fox with his elitist search for a cure for his Parkinson's, who says, well, we have to build a ladder and go up and find cures. We can't wait for them to drop from the sky. Yeah, that's right, Michael, but he doesn't support any alternative research. He gave billions of dollars to failed people that never get any results, and then he wonders why he's going to die from this. And quite frankly, Sounds cruel, but if you're going to be that stupid, well, you get what stupid is. And that's you. So when we look at all that, what does all this mean? We don't have to buy ladders to climb up anywhere to do anything. That's a stooge's way of looking at it. What you have to do is bend over and pick up what is existing here and put it into action. As long as we have rich, ignorant buffoons like you and so many other people, we're never going to ever get any changes. So we don't need to look for anything. We don't need to look for cures. We don't need trillions of dollars of research. Research into what? Another pill they can charge you $1,000 for? What are we looking for? We have the answer sitting there. The same thing with we need 0 points so we can suck energy out of the emptiness within the atom. The atom is mostly... It's not empty, fool, bozo physicist. That's the energy field. You're accessing an energy field, not emptiness. We don't need that, though. Maybe we can do that in the future when we're sitting on top of hydrogen generators, where we have a nice, comfortable 50-degree room we can live in when the outside temperature is 130. And this allows us to expand, to go to places that are less habitable and maybe better places for people to be. I've always been amazed that, most of Southern California, which is one of the prime growing places, is covered with houses now. Well, why do we have houses on premium farmland? All of this makes no sense whatsoever. So we have all the cures, we have all the energy. What is left? Well, ultimately, we have to understand that we are in this horrible, evil environment. It's not about changing things. You will never, ever change this situation. Implementation will never happen. It's going to be the usual things that we see now. Power structures that never give up their power and other people trying to do something different. You can see when we get into this goofball, psycho, rude, evil person that Musk is, he's done nothing. He wants to make a better toxic battery. Of course, he's not using lithium apparently, but the point is battery tech, which hasn't changed either in 100 years, is not the answer. We don't need batteries. We need a better source. That's called hydrogen. But, they push him up there and people think he's some sort of god or a genius. What has he ever done? Made a handheld flamethrower for $3,000? What? That's a fact. Electric cars? What are you talking about, electric cars? Well, the refined electric cars. Yeah, it's still the concept, and you're still working with an old technology and trying to make it better. That's not genius to me. Make a perfect hydrogen energy engine with a generator there, which means you have a perpetual motion machine, so to speak, where it never really needs to be fueled because you're making fuel all the time. Oh, yeah, here we go again. You're talking sense, you're talking logic, you're talking about things that can be done. Well, you're a fool, aren't you? So all of his technology is still based in the old belief system, still based in the old corporations, and still based in all the people that have all the money, and all he's doing is making a variance on it. Well, if that's genius, well, a lot of people do, and of course that's why a lot of people think that, and that's why the world is the messed up sewer it is. Because you got these bozos. I remember some person arguing, it's just not an electric car. It's a better one. It's got a titanium poo thing there, and it's made from turds and all the other things. It's an advanced one. It's a battery-operated car, and battery technology is pretty bad. It's come up now because people are spending billions of dollars. Certainly, if we think he's going to come up with anything great, well, you can forget about that. He's got a giant factory working with the Germans. And, of course, I'm glad to hear that the Swedes have come out now and are going to start making batteries and better ones. So we need to slap that Elon Musk and his corruption in the face. Let's come up with some real tech. Now, why couldn't you make and that's, of course, what a fuel cell is. It's basically a hydrogen battery. Well, why aren't we making hydrogen batteries? What's the matter, genius boy? Can't figure it out? Yeah, no, you can't figure it out, or you certainly don't want to. We know who you owe your soul to. So this is how it all works. And we have to understand that this is all part of our life, and it's part of the control factors that government does. You don't have a choice of what you do, and why we have to monitor and do what we can. But a lot of things is we're going to have to protect ourselves against these by coming up with technologies to do things like neutralize toxic vaccinations or making vaccinations work better for your purpose. Now, this can be done with subtle energy physics, and I've done it myself already now, after recently being forced to be vaccinated. Change the energy into a fantastic positive. Matter of fact, after getting the vaccination, I felt fantastic, and still do. Because I changed the toxicity energetic fields into positive ones to empower myself. That's the next level. That's subtle energy physics. But we don't need stuff like that. We need things like proper technologies that are known to work, that have been researched for a long time. Stem cells are not new. Hydrogen is not new, as I've already stated. So all of this is there. So that's where we're at right now. And that's where we've been for a long time. Because a lot of these things I just talked about have been known. Even subtle energy physics in its primitive form, otherwise known as radionics, acupuncture, and so many other things, have been around for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But we have to understand what we're working with. We have to understand what's going on here. So what do we do? Well, the conclusion is that we have to move into the next level. But you're not going to find too many people that are able to do that or have the knowledge. So people have to support. Now, that's what the world is going to now. And that's a very positive thing. I see this on YouTube and other things. What people are doing now, because all of these things have now moved into what you call monetization. And that's not the crumbs that they pay you because you're stupid enough to take your products that are worth a lot, put them on their channel, which they control, and then they throw you pennies. What's happening now is to use their channel as a empowerment vehicle so that you can crowd fund, so to speak, your own organization. So you can pick people and causes and things that you enjoy, and you can support those people and have them get the word out. The problem is there's a giant censorship thing, and these particularly channels like YouTube and everything else, where they're not going to publicize people unless you have cat videos or some other stupid thing. They will corner you. They will segment you into an area where they will not promote you. So only a certain select people that fit into their reality or their sphere of influence. I can use a lot of words, trying to put a little bit of softener on that. But the point is that the people that are successful are made successful, and there are underlying reasons why. But it's out there. So if you want to support somebody, if you love, and I've been watching this guy with his son of Sam, because there's a lot of occult Satanism aspects to these things. If you want to support this guy, you can do it. He has his own little channel, and now he's actually living off of this. He makes videos on this area for those people interested. He lives in the area where Son of the Sam operated and where all this other activity went on. And he goes out and makes videos, and people pay him to listen to his videos. Well, this is the way it should be. So you should pay. We've done this already. TV went from free, kind of. You had to watch the commercials. Then it went to cable, which, of course, you have to pay for. Things like Netflix, etc. Well, those aren't free. And, of course, you can't put out things for free unless you put commercials there, which most people don't like. So you pay a monthly fee. And when millions of people pay a monthly fee, you generate a lot of money, and you're able to put out, I don't know if we can call it quality, but you're able to put out entertainment that isn't based on commercials or networks. So you assume there's some sort of greater freedom there. But you vote with your pocketbook. If you support a cause and you help that person, and again, I don't know if people think this. I always used to think, well, it's impossible because it costs too much. Well, it doesn't cost that much. And if you get 10,000 people. You got to remember, this is a world with 8 billion people in it. There's 350 million people in the United States alone. So if you get 1,000 people giving $10 a month, which most people could do, especially for a real cause, that's $10,000 a month. Now, you can do a lot with $10,000 a month. You can cover just about all your living costs in this day and age at a comfortable level, probably for $5,000, which includes everything. And that would leave you $5,000 to spend time researching. So it's amazing how much can be done with so few people. And the greater the number of people, the less money. If you had 10,000 people and they gave $1, and everybody wastes money like crazy on, overpriced coffees and all the other garbage, $6 for a scoop of ice cream or whatever it is out there. Everybody wastes money. So if you had 10,000 people give $1, that's $10,000 a month. This is what has to happen. Now, it's amazing how difficult that is to do when there's 350 million people are technically expounding around the world. I have supporters that are not in my country. But, you have to get thousands of people, and you wouldn't think that would be difficult. I mean, people follow stupid things by the thousands. So this is a way for everybody to make a difference, and it could be made virtually for free. If you get 10,000 people and they give $1, who doesn't have $1? $1 isn't much anymore, but when there's 10,000 of them, it is. It's very, very interesting, very, very interesting, and I'm not sure everybody understands that. But people can support what they're... You want to sit there and watch stuff about knitting all day? Well, pay somebody who's a knitter who talks about that all day and give them $5 a month. Now, if everybody did that in the knitting community, this person would be able to do that. And this takes power away from the institutions. We don't need to have physicists that work for MIT. We need to have physicists that work for the people. And the people won't put up with 20 years of doing nothing. The whole idea is that a physicist who's supported by the people on a monthly basis is going to have to produce something. He's going to have to make people happy to a degree. He's going to have to tell things the way it is. And he's going to have to produce end results. All of which you don't have to do as a physicist working for any of these corrupt so-called educational organizations. Dumbademia. So, this is how things can change. And of course, you're not going to change on a big international level because you will be squashed. As I just mentioned, Dr. Sebi, the herbist, they murdered him, even though he was in his late old age. And it goes on and on and on. He was curing too many people. He had celebrities. Well, who's doing this? And if you don't think that there's a group of highly paid exterminators out there, criminals who murder people, you don't get it. Sadly, it's true. And sadly, I've had personal experience with this. So this is not gossip. This isn't some film. I've seen it firsthand. And I've seen it for decades. Really sad. But if you're wise enough and have enough support, you will be able to work within a small select group of people, whether that's 10,000 or 100,000, and help those people. If you're careful and selective, and of course you have to play the game as well, you'll be able to do these types of things. But the world is a sick, evil, corrupt, feces-ridden bucket of goo. And you have to understand that, and if you don't understand that, you're never going to get the reality of it. So I hope everybody has got this, and I hope everybody listens to this many times. You don't have to listen to this over and over again, turn into longer than I expected, but there's a lot to talk about here. Break it up, come back, listen to it again. This is very important. Where does this put us? What do we do? And what's sad about the whole thing is that we're not searching for any answers out there. If you go back 100 or 2 years, well, they didn't really get anything. They didn't have tools, they didn't have technologies, they didn't have machines, they didn't have organized groups of manufacturers and scientists. They were looking So many discoveries, including carbonation, are not more than 150 years old. So many discoveries we've had are within a recent period of time. So we've jumped up radically because of communication, basically, the transfer of information, the working together, and taking what are pretty good scientific breakthroughs and technologies, machines like microscopes that are better and better. We've taken these technologies and developed them to a very high level. Well, that's exciting. So we're not searching anymore. Everybody in this entire spectrum, we have viable working technologies and healing to implement right now. And that's where we need to spend our time, energy, and service is implementation and refining even of these tools. We need to have the perfect hydrogen energy and generator. We then need to go to the ultimate goal, and that's using informational energetic fields to create matter with and to move and change matters. That's the ultimate, and that's not really that unknown. It has to be refined. We know what it takes to do all that. We understand the basics of it. This is something that's going to take some development, but not necessarily is this something that we need 100 years from now type of stuff. This could be done to a very high level within 3 years with the proper support. So that's where we're at right now, and we've been like this for actually quite some time now. Hydrogen energy has been, as I've mentioned, been around for a long time. Stem cells have been around for a long time, but it never happens. And people, instead of closing the system down, don't give to the Red Cross, don't give to the Cancer Society. They do nothing. It's a stupid reality to support failure. We need to move our consciousness to and embrace and let all of society knows, including all those bogus physicists, that we're not going to pay you until you get results. We're not going to pay you army generals until you win a war. We're not going to pay you doctors until you cure people. We're not going to pay you law enforcement until you control crime, because you're not controlling crime. We need to work on a result-based basis. So quite frankly, I have just solved all the problems of this planet, other planets, and the universe in one little hour-and-a-half talk that we're now in 2022. All the answers are there. It may sound funny, ridiculous. It's all there. How does anything I said doesn't solve every single problem that we have? People don't have pure water because they don't have electrical generators to pump it out of the ground, particularly in places like Africa. Well, do I hear hydrogen engine? They don't have transportation to get the crops out of the ground. Do I hear hydrogen motor? People are dying when they don't have to. Do I hear stem cells? Just think if we had Tesla for another 50 years, or even Einstein for another 50 years. All of these people that basically, once they reach a certain age, they're done. Well, why don't we triple that age? Did I hear stem cells? Here we go again. Yet the disinformation agents out there, and they're in everything, and particularly into anything alternative, like the alternative energy people, are all controlled by the corporations to suppress everything. Just like doctors are, and when somebody gets a little big for his britches, they murder them. And even if they kill them late in life, they do it deliberately as an example. All this information is irrefutable. What I've stated is 100% fact. All the solutions of life are all here. Think about it, apply it, and assist all those out there that are doing something instead of assisting any other people. Don't give to anything that this society, the Cancer Society is good. I remember this after 9/11 when people used to ask me to, you don't want to give to the Red Cross. Damn right I don't want to give to the Red Cross. The head of the Red Cross makes $1 million a year. We've got a problem now? Turn your salaries in, and all the other people under him that make $500,000 a year running a non-profit. Well, maybe for you and me it's nonprofit, but it sounds like it's very profitable if you're in the management of the Red Cross, who's one of the crappiest organizations on this planet, ripe with corruption on every single level. Unbelievable. And why should we give to the Cancer Society when they have no treatments for anything? And that goes for all other medical research. They've done nothing. Support failure and you get failure. The answers are there. Everyone needs to do what they can individually to empower people that are trying to do things. And when better things come up, well, you move to somebody else. You help some people there. But we need to be supporting people that are out there that are not in the society structure that are controlled directly. If you're in MIT, if you're in Caltech, you're never going to be able to produce anything different because they'll step on you. They don't want outsiders. They don't want to feel they were wrong. They will fight you even if you're 100% right because it makes them look like it. It's not about truth. It's about ego and money. And that goes for any sector that's out there. Only the individuals can go out there and do something. And this has to be done carefully. And you have to be careful of those who are mysteriously made wealthy like Musk and others. There's not much mysterious when you look at the back of where he come from, the financial industry, which basically he was made by his brother, who's about as Illuminati as you can get. By supporting alternative people, and they may not be perfect, maybe they're goofy, maybe they got some problems in their background, whatever that may be, this is part of life. The problem is everybody's a little on a weird side, so when you look into them, you tend to find out that things are not as rosy as they appear. So these types of things become a serious problem when you look at people. But, what people's personal lives or what people want to talk against someone, I always wonder why people spend time talking against someone else. That's a hidden agenda. Let's talk about their work. Let's talk about what they've done. So when it comes to personal things, it becomes a problem because everybody's a little goofy. But that can change the world. So I brought everything you need to know, how to change the world, all the solutions, everything has been put here for you. And you should know this. And this is what if you talk to other people or you have discussions, this is the kind of information that you need to tell people. Now, when I told somebody about the hydrogen, when he was pushing a crappy little film they had about 10 years ago on 0-point energy, he said nothing. He said, well, what's wrong with 0 point? I said, we don't need 0 point. But he wants to buy into those losers who made millions, basically perpetrating comic book science, which we have no idea how to handle those things. And we don't need to. We don't need to spend 50 billion, 50 trillion on research in 0 point when we have hydrogen that works now. Let's get to 0 point after the entire world is running for free on hydrogen. Then we'll talk about fantasy belief systems done by a bunch of complete bozo clown physicists. So hear it all. So as we go into this new year, everybody needs to think about this, get behind those people that are doing it. And even if it gets down to entertainment, well, support people in the entertainment that you like because you like whatever that is. This is what the world's come down to, and I think this is very good, and I think it empowers people to support their own little niche of what they like. But there's a bigger niche that we all have to get into because our entire survival is based on it, as well as this planet that we've already probably irreparably destroyed. It's all here. So, until next time.